Hi everyone, I'm Tom and today I'm going to be showing you Crown of Ash, which is an area control worker placement kind of game for 1 to 4 players. In it, a jealous king gets fed up of the popularity of his lords and decides to scorch the entire kingdom. Too late to take revenge, the lords turn to the dark arts and are reborn as violent, hideous creatures, back to take revenge on the king and take control of the kingdom for themselves. This is on Kickstarter right now. I'll put a link to the campaign page in the corner of the screen and in the description. You can see all of the final stuff there. This is a prototype, but it should give you a very good idea of how the final thing will look. You can see all the details of what the game will come with, how you can make it happen, how you can get hold of it, all of that lovely stuff. So I've got the game set up for 2 players here. Little Glass Marty is helping me out. We've got some starting fighters, we've got some starting combat cards. Technically this is the discard space, but I'm trying to save space here. They're all in your hand. And we have a fate card that's going to give us some extra points if we have those kinds of fighters at the end of the game. It's a worker placement game. We've got 4 workers. The round ends when everyone's played all of their workers. There are 4 rounds in the game. We'll get some points for the things that we control at the end of every round, whether that is structures or the citadel itself. And there are a few different things that we can do with our workers. We can gather resources. You want to do this to raise fighters. There is bone, ash, sulfur, and blood, and also gold. You use gold to build the structures. And it's a wild resource that can be used for raising fighters as well. So on your turn, you can come and gather resources. The resources on the space determine what you will get. So I'd get a bone and a blood for coming here. This is one of the starting structures that I happen to draw. In a 2-player game, you get 2 of the starting structures each, and they are the regions that you happen to start off in control of. Whenever you visit one of your own structures, or you build a structure yourself, you can put out a fighter from your hand, so one of my starting ones, into the spaces. You can bring fighters back, you can swap them around, anything you like in the region that you control, because it could very well be that your regions will be under attack in the near future. Another thing that you can do is build. Buildings cost gold. It says in the top left what they will cost. They will earn you this many points at the end of each round if you still control them, and they will gain these resources. When you construct a building, paying the cost, we do start with a couple of gold, so you'd be able to do that. You gain the resources that are on them. So Marty'd get himself a sulfur and a blood, and if that region was uncontrolled, you now control that region. Remember, whenever you build, just the same as if you were using your own building, you can amend fighters. So Marty might want to put one of his starting fighters out there from his hand. If you visit someone else's structure, you get their resources, just like if it was your own, but they get a taste as well. In this case, when it's this white box with question marks, that's any resource. So Marty might choose to get a blood as well. Looks like we're racing for something that we're not having. Because after your action, you can raise a fighter if you can afford it. If you can pay the resources. Luckily, I have earned the sulfur and 2 blood, and I can raise this level 1 fighter into my hand. It's got a 3 attack value. It's from the pink kind. It's just what I needed. And we replenish from the relevant deck. It's worth noting when you're building as well, you can overbuild. You can build on top of regions that you already control. The building would now do something different. It would be worth a different amount of points, but every structure underneath is also worth a point. So this 2-point structure would actually be worth 3 because there's 1 underneath it, and you can stack up and up and up, making that region worth more and more points, but it's all the more desirable for someone to take away from you. Speaking of that, another thing that you can do is combat. There are combat spaces around all of the regions and the citadel in the middle, controlled for now by the king, but hopefully we can change that. So Marty wanted to try and take control of my village. I do have a fighter in there. Marty can play up to 2 cards from his hand in secret. This is just for us to look at. So he can play up to 2 cards from his hand. I can see how many cards he's played, but not what he's played. We then have a hand of combat cards, which will increase your combat value by this amount and also change the reward you'll get at the end. You'll get the green award if you win the combat, the red award if you lose the combat. I'm quite keen to keep this structure, so I'm going to play a 4. Marty likes to leave things to chance. So he is going to play the roll a die and get that much power card. So I am defending with 2, who are in the region at the moment. Adding the 4 from my combat card, Marty would be attacking with 3, plus the combat from the die, which would be a 1. Oh dear. Well, it didn't go as well as he'd hoped. So I win the combat, my fighter stays there, I get the victory reward of a resource of my choice. The fighters that participated in Marty's failed combat would go into his graveyard. He does get those back at the end of a round, and there is a structure that will let you get these fighters back. There's also a combat card. This one here, the loss reward, is either you can bring one of your fighters back from the graveyard immediately, or you can send one of the winning side's fighters straight to their graveyard instead of actually going out onto the board. Now, the combat cards that you used go into a discard pile, so they are not going to be available until you've played all of your combat cards, or there is an action that we can take on our player boards, which is get your discard pile back. Because I've used my most valuable defensive card now. But also know Marty would no longer have any fighters in his hand. But at the end of his attack turn, he would get to raise a fighter, so he could grab someone as well if he can afford anyone. So we go around gathering resources, raising fighters, building structures, making them worth more and more points. There's also the matter of the Citadel. This starts the game in the control of the king, but you can go to one of the action spaces. The different action spaces will affect your attack value. +1 here. 0 here. Only one person can go to each of these spaces. Loads of people can go to this space though at a -1 disadvantage. You can go here with up to 3 fighters. Defenders win on ties, so I might want to play a fair bit here. The king does not play a combat card, so I would have 3, 4, 7 versus his 5. He's booted out. I would take control of the Citadel instead, getting a gold for my trolls because I won the combat. But I've also lost that card. And now I have control of the Citadel. Now there is good and bad in that. Good in that there's a lot of points to be had at the end of every round for being in control of the Citadel, but these fighters cannot be altered or amended. They will only come out of the Citadel when they are defeated in combat. So you've effectively lost 2 or even 3 cards from your arsenal. But there is an advantage to these kinds. So there is a point advantage that we'll see in a minute from the fate card. But you get bolster tokens if you have 2 matching fighters from the same kind, the same colour. You can see at the top which kind they are. It's also the resource that you need to pay the most of to get that fighter. So I will have added 1 to their combat value. So theirs is 5 now. Admittedly, no better than the king's was. For now, I'm in control of the Citadel. That's the important part. At the end of the round, after we've played all of our workers, we get points for the areas we now control. So Marty did some good building here. He's got 1, 2 from his starting regions. He built here 3, 4, 5, 6. That's a nice start. I just shown these 2 regions, so it's 1 point here. I did overbuild this one, so this one's worth 2, 3 for the 1 tile that's underneath it. So I've got 4 points from there, but I control the Citadel, which at the end of the first round in a 2-player game is worth 3 points. 1, 2, 3. Turn order's adjusted. The player with the fewest points gets to decide if they want to go first or not next round. You don't have to. And we would go again for 4 more rounds. The display gets refreshed as well, and you get your fighters back from your graveyard at the end of a round. At the end of the game, you get a point for every 2 money, a point for every 3 matching resources, and your fate card comes into play. All of your fighters that are the kinds shown on your fate card are worth the number of points based on the tier that they come from. So for me, it would be pink and yellow. This pink fighter that I raised is from the 1 deck, could be worth 1 point. But if I've got the better and better ones, they could be worth 2 or even 3 points each. We add up all of our points. Most points wins. If there's a tie, we also score points for the 2 kinds of fighters that are not on our fate card. And hopefully that would break the tie. So that is the multiplayer game, but we can also play this solo. The bot player doesn't get a fate card. Their combat cards are shuffled up. They have a fighting track on their resource space because they don't get resources. Whenever they would get resources, they get that many points instead. And they have a deck of AI cards that is nicely shuffled, and they need their die to determine which region they are participating in. There is no king in the solo game. They start in control of the Citadel, and you need to take that away from them if you want to stop them earning a load of points. You can also use this bot in a multiplayer game. It can tighten up a 2 or 3 player game, or also reduce the interaction between players. You know, there is an AI player that probably won't win a multiplayer game, but is there to pick on instead of another player. On the bot's turn, you roll a die to determine which region they are going to have a look at, and you just number the regions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they're going to look at the village here, and their card tells us what they are going to do. They go through their card left to right until they can do something. So first of all, is the region player controlled or AI stroke uncontrolled? It's player controlled. That's my region. It's my starting region. They're going to attack my region. They place one of their minions on an attack space, and they're going to start an early attack. They use their strongest possible fighters, so up to 2. So they've got a 2 and a 1 in their starting cards. Their cards are all face up. You know the fighters that they've got and that they might use, and you know that they're always going to use the strongest ones. And they're going to use their top combat card. So to defend, I've got nobody here, and they're attacking with 3. I could try and defend with 4, but you know, they might use anything that will give them the region. It's a 1, so they would have 2, 3, 4 versus my 4, when we tie, defenders win. So I would get myself a resource, they would get themselves a resource, which is a point to them. Oh, I haven't reset the points tracks ever, but I would keep control of my region. And hey, at least they've lost something so far. They go through their entire deck. They don't, it's all just shuffled up, and they don't retrieve those cards early. There are also actions that have them using the resource spaces. They get points instead of the resources. Building structures, they'll always build the rightmost structure. Whenever they visit one of their own structures or build something new, they put the strongest possible combination in the middle. And they can also raise fighters to add to their hand, of course. The tracker determines which card they get, so it starts on a 1, but that means the next time they're going to get a tier 2 twice, and the 4th fighter that they raise is level 3, and then it loops back around. So they start with a big advantage being in control of the Citadel. The difficulty of the solo game is based on which tier of fighter you want starting in the Citadel. Easy mode, you just put a level 1 in there. Medium, you put a level 2. Hard, you put a level 3 in there. And still, most points wins. So there we go. That is Crown of Ash. I hope that gives you a good idea of what the game is like, both multiplayer and solo. The campaign page is linked in the description. You can check that out, see all of the final stuff there, and how you can make it happen and get a copy for yourself. If you'd like to see more from me, there are hundreds of videos on this channel. I hope you will see another one that you like, and there'll be one recommended in a minute, I think. Thank you very much for watching, most of all though, and I'll see you for the next game. Bye everyone.